Welcome to False Flag Weekly News. I'm Kevin Barrett, back from the disappeared last week. I'm broadcasting live, at least I think I'm still alive, from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And with me is co-host Helen Byniski, who, along with our good friend Greg McCarran, held down the fort last week. So thank you for doing that, Helen, and it's great to be with you today in the middle of this insanity that's going on in the world.
Good to be here.
All right, so where do we start this week? Well, let's start with the let's see, maybe the way to get on our list so that you can find out where False Flag Weekly News is going to be broadcast. It's very important that you do this, because if you don't, when the evil internet oligarchs take us down and deplatform us and rip us off of YouTube and shred us from Facebook and crush and annihilate us from Twitter, and you can not find us anywhere, we can still email you and tell you where we are. It'll be some black hole, deep, dark parts of the internet, maybe Vimeo. How about Vimeo? Hey, okay, so please email us. And oh man, this week, false flags, it's out of control. I mean, I'm just wondering if the world will still be there when I try to fly back home from Malaysia next week. This is nuts. Let's start with last night. We can't believe anything the U.S. government tells us. Here's the Japanese tanker guy telling us, from last week, that the tanker was hit by a flying object, not by a mine. And so they're still lying. And now it's all about Iran supposedly reaching out over international airspace to shoot down very valuable American drones. Oh my goodness. Trump came this close to starting a war over this. Here's the story from Al Manar, the Lebanese Hezbollah affiliated outlet, giving some of the details. The third of Khordad missile defense shield took it down. The Iranians say it was an RQ-4 Global Hawk. The U.S. says it was an MQ-4C Triton. Either way, it's worth about $200 million. It's a Global Hawk, and the Iranians got it. What do you think, Helen?
I didn't realize the thing was quite that big. They show the picture of it superimposed over a 747, I think, and that's huge. And yeah, they bragged about it. They got it. They actually did this one, so it's not like one of these tanker jobs where nothing actually happens and it doesn't serve any strategic purpose. Here, it actually does serve a strategic purpose. It's to say, hey, get out of our airspace, dude. And so it's a good thing that Trump didn't decide to, he must be reading our tweets after all. I sent him a big one when he said, you're making a big mistake. I said, no, you're making a big mistake. Don't do this. He must have read my tweet. I'm sure that's why he decided not to go to war. But to be serious, I did. I totally did. I saved us from...
How can we ever repay you? Get on False Flag Weekly News list and send us money. And if we get enough money, we might actually start paying Helen, which would be really nice. But
that would be awesome. Yeah.
You guys are going to have to start really coughing up if we want to do anything like that.
Money so I can buy my own surveillance drones, so I can make sure none of this ever happens again. But
there you go. If you had a drone flying over there, you would actually see what happened. You'd know whether it was in international airspace or not. You can't believe a darn thing the U.S. military says. I hope we have this next slide from Wired.
You can't. I mean, it's really funny because, not only did they first say that there was no drone, that was the first thing that they said. I was on RT covering the news live as it was happening.
What drone?
The first response from the U.S. was, "There's no drone. What are you talking about? There's no drone." And then they're like, "Oh well, there was no drone in Iranian airspace." So yes, there was a drone, but it was in international airspace. And then they put up a graph, try to confuse people by saying, "Oh, it was over the water." Well, the water in the Strait of Hormuz it's one territory or the other. There's no international waters there. It's too narrow. But the Wired article is.
Yeah, well, check out the Wired article. I thought I couldn't believe it when I just ran across this just a few hours ago. And so I tortured our producer, Alan, by forcing him to include this slide in the list, which was very difficult for him. But it was worth it, Alan. Great job, because look at this. Wired, which is essentially pretty mainstream, describes Global Hawks as massive surveillance platforms in operation since 2001 with a wingspan of more than 130 feet and a maximum takeoff weight of more than 16 tons. Equivalent to roughly 7 shipping containers of cocaine.
Wait a minute. Very specific of them. I mean, how did they know what was in the drone? Did they have some part in loading that fancy cargo?
Right. At Veterans Today, where I work, some of the information that I am pretty sure is accurate is that Global Hawks are flying drugs all around the world. They don't have to land. They load in Pakistan. They collect already processed heroin, and they take it to Europe, the U.S., and South America. This is what they do, and that helps finance their operations, like this harassing Iran. So Wired magazine is giving us a nudge and a wink. Know what I mean? Telling us they know that these Global Hawks are just drug smuggling vehicles. Like, you can't believe a damn thing thing the U.S. military says. What a bunch of cretins and criminals.
They would make perfect drug smuggling vehicles because you don't have to have any humans in there to like want to take their cut or like do something corrupt or get paid off and give the drugs to the wrong person or something. Yeah, exactly. And they can't. Yeah, drones can't talk, so they really are the perfect drug smuggling vehicles. I mean, I had not heard that they were being used in this way before, but it makes complete sense. So I can actually believe that one. Yes.
Yeah. What somebody at Wired probably got this from somebody on the inside, not for attribution, I would imagine. You don't want to follow Gary Webb into that too.
Well, they linked it. They linked it to that. They linked it to that Philadelphia bust, that huge thing where they found like 1.15 tons of cocaine on a ship coming into Philadelphia, and so that was what the link goes to. But it's an awfully specific thing to be linking to drones. I mean, you could say 7 tons of anything. You can 7 tons of cocaine is a weird thing to put in a drone, even hypothetically. It doesn't. Yeah, no, that's not a
Freudian slip.
An accident.
It's an in joke, folks, and you're
just making sure
the
you're paying attention. They're just making sure you're paying attention.
American people are the butt of the joke, and the Pentagon is laughing, and Wired is laughing. Everybody's laughing, but it's not that funny, Helen, because we almost had World War III or something pretty bad last night. Trump almost started a war on Iran Thursday night, reads the Vice News headline. And apparently it was very much like the USS Liberty situation. Few people know that Peter Hunem, in his book, The Operation Cyanide, described how Lyndon Johnson launched nuclear-armed bombers with orders to drop nuclear weapons on Russian installations in Egypt after the USS Liberty incident, and then called them back when they were minutes away from being out of range. Trump just did something like that last night. So it was a Dr. Strangelove moment, and Slim Pickens didn't quite jump on the bomb and ride it all the way down, but we came like that close.
I have to say, I'm pretty shocked to see those Mueller fanatics in front of the White House actually holding up the correct letters to be protesting for once. I mean, we've seen like Barr cover up or whatever nonsense they've got in there before. Now they're finally doing no war. Yeah, where have you guys been for the last 3 years?
So which group is that?
12 years. Where have you guys been for the last 20 years?
Code fluorescent yellow. That's right. Is it code fluorescent yellow?
These guys, I mean, the random crap that they'll put there, and now they're finally saying. So I hope they stick with the no war and stop with the Mueller or stop with the 45 cover up or the stupid crap that they've been putting there. Nobody cares about your stupid collusion fetish, guys. It's over. It's over. Go home, but don't go home if you're going to protest war.
Well, I like Medea Benjamin. I think she's cute, and I felt sorry for her when the Egyptians broke her bones.
Yes.
Yeah, those Egyptian bastards who killed Morsi broke Medea's bones, and she does a lot of really good work. So even if she's a little bit dense on certain issues, she admitted basically that she knew 9/11 was an inside job on my radio show way back in 2006, and now she's backtracked.
You're saying these people on the front lawn are code pink? Because the ones with the letters are not code pink.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was code pink, but they were changing their colors. Okay.
No, I mean unless they're code pink using the techniques of previous protesters, because those ones that were on the lawn were all like these collusion nut jobs that have been they've been there. They had like a cutout of Barr like smirking and all this stupid silly stuff. And they're not wearing pink. They're not wearing pink. Look at them. Medea Benjamin is awesome. I totally support her protest. But these guys are not.
She did admit 9/11 was an inside job once, and that's enough. I'll stick with that. So this crazy thing happened after the Iranians apparently have said that they refrained from shooting down a U.S. military plane that had 35 people on board that was accompanying the drone. So that was very nice of them, and that Trump would have just acknowledged that. He would have had a great excuse for not going to war. But there are all kinds of mixed messages going on here. Miscommunications. It must be Mercury in retrograde, as my astrologer friends tell me. Of course, we Aquarians do not believe in astrology, but that's what they tell me. Anyway, the messages are getting lost in translation. Here we have Trump insisting that he sent a message, I'm about to launch the bomb. Quick, stop me. It's sort of like, like Peter Sellers, talking to the Russian premier and Dr. Strangelove. But the Russian premier never even heard it. The Iranians say they never got the message. Something's very wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to say, I never got your email. Or, the text must not have gone through. It's like, I mean, this is some really like low rent crap here. I mean, it's kind of silly. But yeah, the Iranians did give Trump an out by saying, we could have shut down your plane, but we didn't. And it's also kind of funny because like Trump has been doing this the whole time with just the bluffing and the blustering. And they're saying, we could have shot down your plane. We could have bombed your cities. We could have done all this really crazy.
We wanted to do terrible things to you. We could, but we don't. Because
we thought we were going to nuke Washington, D.C. with our invisible nukes that BB's been saying we have for 20 years. But we didn't because we're really cool guys. So, hey, how about like removing those sanctions? That Trump could have like done that. And he would have been like really popular, I think. Although no, actually, they would have found some way to argue with that too. The people who want him out of there just want him out of there. They don't care what he does.
Well, there's really no good way to get out of this. Although I made a suggestion that Trump should go be in the front ranks of a celebration of the victory over Daesh in Tehran. And if he fired Pompeo and Bolton and did that, maybe the Supreme Leader would invite him and they could have a good old time. They could have talks. The Iranians would definitely agree to talk about everything. But we're going to tell you what our red lines are and we're not going to change anything. And Trump could put that out as, oh, a great victory for me. So I wrote that up for VT, Veterans Today, find the latest on that there. But I don't think that's very likely to happen. I mean, this is a real collision course going on. And the mixed communications are making things even more dangerous. The next one is Trump's mistake. He said, Iran made a very big mistake. Looks like he's about to punch them. And so what are they going to do? They're going to punch first, right? Well, no, they didn't, fortunately. But apparently then Trump changed, what mistake means is they just made a mistake. They didn't mean to shoot it down.
Yeah, he's claiming he meant to say it in that sense, but that's not the sense that everybody read it. Like, I wasn't the only one to respond to that tweet being like, hey, just because the U.S. likes to spy on the rest of the world doesn't mean the rest of the world accepts that as the way of doing business.
Is Trump, but we're seeing exactly what I want to.
No, and I think that if he did fire Pompeo and Bolton and stop them running their mouth, all of these miscommunications would suddenly just evaporate and blow away. I mean, yes, you still have Trump with his hair-triggered tweet finger or whatever. But you don't have.
You think the trigger is up in his hair?
Actually, his hair might be made out of triggers. No, his hair is made out of triggers. Anytime you pull one, a tweet comes out, and that's why he's
going to push the trigger, and the missile is going to come right out from under his hair. I think that's our secret.
No. The missiles are hidden in Bolton's mustache. You've got.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, it's really not all that funny that we maybe came close to having almost everybody killed last night. But anyway, the Iranians are doing the responsible thing, as I assume. I mean, I believe them when they say that the Japanese guy was right. We didn't hit that ship with a mine, and we shot down this drone over international or over our own space, not international space. I tend to believe them just because their track record is vastly better than the Americans.
Yeah, even if the thing with the Americans is that they've got the boy who cried wolf situation, where even if they did for some reason come out with the truth at some point, nobody would believe them because they've just lied every single time for the last 100 years, and now nobody was going to believe anything they say. And yeah, I mean they have, for one thing, the Iranians have a video of themselves shooting down the drone, and it's a lot more convincing than the video of where you have the boat coming up to the thing and removing the mine, when it's like, okay, well, the mine would have had to gone off under the water in order to have poked that hole. So why would them removing the mine mean anything? That doesn't even make sense. So I believe their video over the US video.
It's the footage of Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. It's grainy.
Yeah, actually, I'm surprised they didn't blame the ship thing on the Loch Ness Monster and say, oh, it's been an Iranian monster the entire time. See?
And the undersea Bin Laden was probably helping it. That's what happened. He's still alive. He's undead.
He never died. He just swam to an underwater cave.
Be very terrified of Iran. They've got themselves surrounded with U.S. military bases. We could all be in terrible trouble here. So Iran's going to the UN and saying that it has indisputable evidence on its airspace violations. They're not showing grainy videos here. And they're showing that they picked up the wreckage from Iran's territorial waters. And as you said, Helen, it's mostly Iran's territorial waters there anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the Strait of Hormuz is narrow enough that it's Iran on one side and I think Oman on the other. So it's got to be one of the two. You can't just say, oh, it was in international waters, because there is no international waters. So they're lying, obviously, because you can't, if they wanted to tell a convincing lie, they could have said, oh, it was in Omani territorial waters. And that would have at least been plausible, but this is not. And so, yeah, I'm more inclined to believe the ones who did the shooting.
Me too. And that doesn't mean that the Iranians are taking things lying down. I think they've decided that the way you deal with a bully is not by sort of knuckling under and surrendering this and then surrendering that and going along with this and going along with that until the bully is just kicking the crap out of you and you're not even protesting. No, they're saying, look, we're gonna slap the bully as hard as we can, and even if he kills us, we don't care. We're gonna, that's how we are. That's how Imam Hussein was. He's our role model. So that's the basic fundamental.
If you got someone bigger than you who's trying to knock you around, then you have to stand up to them, or else you have just made yourself a target for the rest of your natural life. And it's like you can either do that, and then you end up becoming a vassal state to the U.S., like certain other countries, But obviously, if they want to last any great length of time, they've got themselves surrounded by military bases. What are they going to do? So yeah, this isn't North Korea where you can like posture and then step back a little bit and then have them come to the negotiating table. We've already proven that we're negotiating in bad faith when we withdrew from the nuclear deal, despite them actually, adhering to every single precept of the deal and allowing inspections, and they were adhering to the deal completely. And then we withdrew, and now we're expecting them to come to the negotiating table. No, we've already proven we cannot negotiate in good faith with these people. Why should they come to the table?
Exactly. So they've announced that they're going to be enriching uranium over the limit set by the deal by the end of the month, which is exactly a week from now. That's interesting. So we'll see how the U.S. respond.
This is another part where they have no choice, because we've made it so they can't sell anything. So like they have to get rid of their excess materials somehow or stockpile them. So it's like they get in trouble if they sell the stuff, or they get in trouble if they hoard the stuff. So what do? They obviously have to do something. So I guess hoarding the stuff is what they're doing here, enriching it further, because they can't get rid of it. So they've tried to paint them into a corner, but rather than like throw up its hands and say, oh yes, you've outsmarted us, we want your like crappy negotiations, which are going to involve us becoming the next the Libya option, or whatever John Bolton's ridiculous example of negotiation is going to be, then they're just going to do what they have to do and say, well, if you want to get us out of this corner, you actually have to step into the plane and do something. And Europe is, of course, being supine and spineless and not doing anything, but they kind of have to do something now.
Well, we had a report last week that even before this latest shoot down of the drone that can carry 7 cargo containers full of cocaine, but at this time, presumably that's not what they're carrying, although maybe if they were, maybe some Iranian bad guys shot it down just to get their hands on it. That's one conspiracy theory I don't endorse. Anyway, but another conspiracy theory I don't necessarily endorse came from the Hebrew language Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv, and a writer named Dmitry Peskov. I don't know who he is. He claims, or that was what was that? I'm sorry. Dmitry Peskov was the Moscow spokesperson who ridiculed the American take on this false flag incident involving the Japanese tanker, comparing it to Colin Powell's famous vials with white powder. So the world isn't buying this false flag at all, is it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Even the mainstream media is not, they didn't buy that. I mean, Bloomberg and CNN, I wrote about for RT, they both said, well, Iran has nothing to gain by this, so maybe we should be skeptical. And I think it's because, I mean, to hear what the insider accounts of what the situation at the White House was, that basically you had Pompeo and Bolton on one side cheering him on, and Haspel, of course, cheering him on to go to war. And then on the other side, you had like the entire staff of the Pentagon, people who actually like know that we wouldn't win a war with Iran, and maybe we don't want to get into this thing that we can't get out of. So fortunately, cooler heads prevailed. I mean, if he just gets rid of Pompeo and Bolton, the nuclear clock will be turned back a few minutes, I think, because these people are just determined to have us pitch us headforth into the end times.
Well, that's obviously the best first step. And in fact, Trump was reportedly on the verge of getting rid of Bolton, a couple of weeks ago. Well, go ahead, just do it, Trump, just do it.
Talk to Adelson instead, and Adelson talked him off the cliff. That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah, that's maybe $100 million in his campaign coffers that's at stake there. Talk about bribery from organized crime. So anyway, this Israeli newspaper Ma'ariv claims that the U.S. was planning for this massive airstrike. They were going to just hit one Iranian facility, but they were going to just hit it over and over with massive explosive power and bounce the rubble and bounce the rubble and bounce the rubble, and hope that the Iranians wouldn't mind. Good luck with that, guys. The Iranians, they're followers of Imam Hussein, and go read about Imam Hussein and whether he knuckles under to bullies.
It's a little ridiculous because they just think that it's one size fits all, and they're making the same mistake as the Bush administration made with, there's no difference between Sunni and Shia. They're all the same thing. So we can count on the one to do what the other does. And here they're saying, we can just do what we've done in Syria every time there's a bogus gas attack. We'll throw some missiles at a thing, and then we'll look all tough, and they'll shut up and sit down and play nice. And it's like, no, actually, Iran is not Syria. We haven't been bombing the crap out of Iran for the last better part of a decade, for one thing. And they don't have a U.S.-backed insurgency in there making a mess. There's all kinds of reasons that Iran is not like Syria, but they're not going to sit down and take this quietly. It would be a massive, massive incident if they did. I mean, if they did bomb the thing.
Well, I thought Caitlin Johnson's article here was excellent. She does a lot of good work, although for some reason she's really allergic to 9/11 truth. Maybe she's trying to protect her career options or something, or maybe she's just selectively stupid. I don't know.
She's selectively stupid, I think. She's too smart not to know that certain things that she doesn't talk about are true. And there are a couple topics she won't touch with a 10-foot pole, and she screams at anybody who brings them up in her mentions and stuff. So she's got some big holes in her coverage. But yeah, usually she's pretty good.
Yeah, I thought she made a good point here when she said that the notion that this would be a limited strike and the Iranians might not respond with a major response is very unlikely. But hey, that's how you sell a big war. You pretend you're selling a small war. Remember Wolfowitz and the flowers and candy that the Iraqis were creating? It was a cakewalk, wasn't it? Yeah.
This would be a cakewalk. Mission accomplished, guys. Mission accomplished.
And of course, Iran's military capabilities and their dedication is just vastly beyond anything remotely available in Iraq. Their technology is vastly beyond Iraq, not to mention Afghanistan. We can't even beat these Afghan guys who have nothing. Saudi Arabia can't beat these Yemeni guys who have nothing. Iran has got the dedication of those people with high technology and a huge country. This is insane.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous. I mean, even some of the editorials in the New York Times talking about how we need to go to war in Iran. It's like they took the same people who were cheering on the Iraq war. They changed the last letter of the country, and they just said, okay, it's just the same thing all over again. Well, no, actually, I mean, Iran is much larger population, hasn't been severely handicapped by another war like a decade ago. They've got all the advantages that the other countries that we usually pick on don't have. So the idea of the U.S. picking on a country that's even a tenth of its own size, we would get the floor mopped with us. I mean, like you said, we can't even beat up Afghanistan properly. They're holding more territory now than they were when like a couple of years ago, and so it's ridiculous. We are an embarrassment, and
they're getting minimal outside help from Pakistan. Well, Pakistan has some nukes, but they're not like a huge power. Iran is getting outside help from Russia and China. Watch out, people. Anyway, Tulsi Gabbard with her No More Presidential Wars Act is definitely on the right track here. The only major presidential candidate that has any sense at all, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, people are cheering for Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a warmonger, unfortunately. I mean, I kind of fell for the whole Bernie thing in 2016, but after he basically threw his supporters under the bus and told us to vote for Hillary, I would never vote for Bernie again. And anybody who is doing so after getting fooled in 2016 is they're really fooling themselves. I mean, I would suggest you take a good long look at your priorities, because somebody who spends the entire campaign season railing against people who take money from Goldman Sachs and Hillary Clinton and people who take money from Goldman Sachs, and then says, oh, go vote for Hillary Clinton because she's better than the other guy. Well, no, actually, you're doing it wrong. So yeah, Tulsi is still by far the best out there in terms of
she's my favorite Islamophobe. She's a friend of genocidal Modi, the mass Muslim killing lunatic running India, and she can't stand Muslims. But heck, I'm Muslim, and I might even vote for her because she doesn't want to kill them.
She doesn't want to bomb Muslims. I mean, that to me is much more important than what her personal feelings are.
Yeah, but Obama loved Muslims, and he really killed them. He showed how much he loved them, didn't he?
Yep.
So good news from the Iranian perspective. Iran rolled up a big CIA spy network this week, reportedly over 100 CIA spies in Tehran, a big cyber espionage network. And here's a picture of the so-called den of espionage in downtown Tehran. It was the old U.S. embassy taken over by students, and it turned out it was the CIA nerve center for completely controlling Iran, which was a puppet state. The CIA taught the Shah how to use his torture chambers, trained all his torturers, ran the whole country from that CIA station. And the amazing array of 1970s era communications wiretapping equipment is a sight to behold. Floor after floor of this stuff. It's incredible. If you're ever in Tehran, and everybody should go to Tehran now, I guess, and see it while you still can, you gotta see the den of espionage. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I'm joking. I'm hoping that Tehran will be around a lot longer than Washington, D.C. will, and I actually think it probably will.
Too. I mean, Washington, D.C., I don't see being around for much longer, but it's just funny you say that the CIA train the secret police and everything. It's like, you're talking to an MEK troll on Twitter when they start like acting like they're nostalgic for the era of the SAVAK and the CIA's torture police. It's like, yeah, no, things were much better. Things were much better under the Shah. It's like, well, yeah, you call yourself an Iranian, you have an Iranian flag as your picture, but dude, you're an MEK troll. Please, sit down.
And they've got some, cyber brainwashed young morons who buy into this, just like there's some cyber brainwashed young morons who buy into ISIS and, sneak out of their parents' house with a ticket to Syria to go fight for the glorious caliphate. So there are some dumb people in the world who fall for things, but I'd say 90% plus of Iran's population, including all these secular types who don't even like their supreme leader that much, and they're probably 20 million like that, I would imagine. Many highly educated. All those people are going to rally to defend their country if it's attacked. And Pompeo and Bolton are just idiots. Obama, whatever you want to say about him, he was a creep, but he had a pretty good strategy, which was to deal sensibly with Iran and hope that it would implode in the long term, which it won't do if you harass it too much. And we're harassing them way too much. And frankly, I don't want Iran to implode. I like the Islamic Republic. I think it's one of the greatest experiments, far better than the French Revolution, to say the least. And for our time, maybe a better version of the American Revolution as well. The Muslim countries need democracy and they want to get back to their Islamic roots. Iran has actually done it successfully by demanding total autonomy and independence and doing it themselves and doing it fairly well. So good for them.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that there are a lot of young people who are discontent with their form of government, but if pressure is applied from the outside, they will indeed rally to defend their government because it's theirs. It's not some outside regime change nonsense. But Bolton thinks that they can send the MEK in there and the people are going to embrace them. No, the MEK fought against Iran in the Iraq war. You think they're going to embrace these people? No, they're going to butcher them. And I mean, like, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people, honestly. But it's ridiculous. The complete insanity that these people are operating under, that they think that they can just send in these complete psychotic cult monsters and that the Iranians are going to embrace them because they're not the mullahs. Yeah, sure, dude, no.
Well, the good news for Pompeo and Bolton is that there actually are some Iranians who love the MEK and the Shah. The bad news for Pompeo and Bolton is that Iran just arrested all 100 of them. So, anyway, on to Morsi. Mohammed Mursi, another great if flawed figure in the Islamic world, another democratizer, another guy who's trying to get Islam and democracy and relative independence to the region, although he compromised too much on the independence part. He was crushed by essentially the nastiest people on earth. They, after he was democratically elected with a bigger landslide than any American president has ever had, they stymied him completely, and then the military overthrew him, locked him in a cage, slowly tortured him to death. In August 2013, they killed about 1,000 people, unarmed demonstrators for Morsi in one day. The media here is lying. They're saying in a month. No, that was all in one day.
Well, then Muslim Brotherhood, I've at least heard, is a CIA-backed operation. So, like, is this a faction thing? Like, is two factions of the Anglo-Zionist empire feuding with one another here? Because, yeah, obviously Sisi's crackdown is pretty totalitarian and appalling with the number of protesters he's slaughtering. But Morsi was no great shakes either. From what I understand, he was the last candidate standing as far as that election went. It was either him or Mubarak's handpicked successor. So he was not, in fact, the primary choice of a lot of the voters. He was better than Mubarak's guy, but I don't know, unless I'm severely misinformed, but from reading things from some very smart people that just dismiss the Muslim Brotherhood as a puppet of the CIA and other American/Zionist interests. Anybody home? Okay, so what's next? Looks like we lost Kevin there for a second. I mean, I can try to entertain you people, but I need a slide in front of me, so. Yeah, I'm trying to go on to the next story. You got to put the next story up, please. What's the next story? I guess no one's putting the next story up. Okay, so the next story is, there we go. Okay, more Morsi. Can we get to the non-Morsi here? Because I'm not really a Morsi expert. Not really a Morsi expert. Okay, yeah, Hong Kong. Okay, well, this, I was a little confused last week. I wasn't sure whether this is actually a legitimate protest or not. Now I can with more certainty say that it appears this is not a legitimate protest because they got what they were protesting for, and then they decided they're going to keep protesting just, because it pisses China off. I mean, that's at least what it looks like to me. They got their extradition bill pushed back. And now they are demanding that the leader of Hong Kong step down because of how she handled the protests. Well, I mean, I don't know. It seems to me that Hong Kong is a weak point for China that the U.S. is very liable to exploit, and that it's really easy to make these big photogenic protest movements and protest marches. Especially, I mean, it was a big thing that they cleaned up after themselves, and so you have an environmentally friendly protest movement because people made fun of the Trump protesters in the UK because they didn't clean up after themselves and they left the whole place a mess while protesting for the environment. So they managed to sort of capitalize off that by saying, oh, look at these Hong Kong protesters, how well behaved they are. It seems like a Western intelligence operation to me. Could be wrong. Certainly the way the Chinese are handling it with having this counter narrative that is completely opposite to what's actually going on in the street is that's pretty authoritarian in and of itself. So, I mean, you've got two sides here that are both working very hard to control the narrative. And I mean, I would say that it's China's business what they do in their country. The US should not be interfering. However, like if you guys don't want a real revolution to break out, maybe let your people have access to some real information because, I mean, obviously what's going on in China is coming to the US at some point. We're actually testing out our surveillance tools over there. So, I mean, it's you have your choice of what you want to see come home. All right, so what's the next one? Oh, Kevin's back.
It's amazing. They let me come back. Here I am. So which story are we on, Helen?
We're on Hong Kong, talking about the protests.
Well, we made it all the way to Hong Kong. Cool. Yeah, so here in Malaysia, it's kind of a free country. I think people can kind of find stuff on the internet if they want to, most of the time, unless somebody's messing with them. But over in China, not so much. China is taking these techniques that they pioneered, and in some cases, NSA pioneered. Remember how NSA destroyed the viral video 9/11 in Operation Gladio from RT several years back, made it just totally disappear from all the search engines, from all emails that sent the URL. And so now China is doing that big time. So nobody in China can even find out what's going on in Hong Kong. Google Hong Kong, and you get cat videos and propaganda, celebrity gossip, and business news. That's the future.
I was saying before you came back on that the U.S. has been testing out its surveillance tools by selling them to the Chinese and seeing how the people react. And basically, if we don't want these tools to come back home, then we better hope that the Chinese find some way around this so they can figure, oh, it doesn't work, or oh, it inspires them to rebel even more. I mean, I have my doubts about the authenticity of these Hong Kong protests because after they got what they wanted, they said, oh, we're going to have this protest anyway, and now we want her to step down because we got what we wanted, but we're not satisfied with it.
We want more because we want to destabilize Hong Kong. Yeah,
exactly. I thought that last week there was a chance it might be authentic, maybe, but no, I don't think so.
I think it's hybrid. I mean, there's an authentic part and a non-authentic part.
Obviously, you can't create a protest out of nothing unless you just have ridiculous gobs of money. But yeah, they take the germ of an authentic protest and they turn it into something way too like photogenic and well put together to be legitimate.
Yeah, it's totally astroturf as opposed to grassroots. Speaking of astroturfing, how about the Zio-Check news this week? Inside Israel's $1 million troll army. That was actually June 12th. Technically not quite this week, but highly relevant. 15,000 people from 73 countries, I think it is. My screen just freaked out, but I think it was 73 countries. They are working in a basement in Tel Aviv. Well, they're all over the world, but they're controlled from a basement in Tel Aviv. Helen, do you think those people might be watching us?
Oh yeah, I think they might have just paid you a visit a little bit back there. I mean, I know they paid me a visit yesterday.
Hi guys.
Messing with my volume every time I started to say not so nice things about that basement in Tel Aviv where they are living, working, breeding. Obviously, I think most people who are watching this have probably been on the receiving end of the hasbara troll industrial complex here. So. I mean, it's just pretty interesting to know that this is our own money. This is taxpayer dollars that are going to Israel to quote unquote fight BDS. And then it gets turned over to this Ministry of Strategic Affairs, whose whole raison d'etre is fighting BDS, quote unquote, because they consider us to be enemy combatants. And so then we are financing our own trolling, basically. I mean, a similar operation was uncovered with the State Department.
It's worse though, because they're really getting bang for their buck, because this is their $1 million troll army. That doesn't sound like that much for PR. That's the price of one Pepsi commercial. But they've got 15,000 people working from 73 countries for free. This is what's beautiful about the Mossad. Every other intelligence agency in the world basically has to pay you, not counting VT, Veterans Today, where I work for absolute free because it's run by retired, angry 9/11 truther, somewhat unstable occasionally, intelligence people. But other than that, the only way that you could work for free for an intelligence agency is to volunteer for the Mossad. And zillions of people are willing to do this. They're just so loyal to their ethnic group or religion. And that's not a slur on the ethnic group and religion. It's just a fact. And they motivate these people, Helen, not by paying them. They give them, get this, prizes. It's like the back of a cereal box. Third place gets a cold glass of Palestinian blood. Second place, no, they're not even go to second place.
Second place gets a new liver fresh from a Palestinian child. No, there was a Wikipedia editing contest where they were giving, the winner who changes the narrative the most to be the most big, blatant, throbbing Zionist lies gets a hot air balloon ride over Israel. And if you're really not nice, we'll throw you out of the hot air balloon.
Yeah. And if Hezbollah shoots it down, we'll declare you a martyr and move on.
Yes.
So anyway, how about this next story? Another Israeli cyber craziness story. UK human rights advocate Yana Peel.
Oh my God, this one.
Peel it. According to all the tabloids, she's having a sex change, calling herself or himself Banana Peel. Hey, that rhymes. Featuring a banana implant. It's medically dubious, may not last that long, but hey, it's cheap, nutritious, and 100% organic.
Gets all the potassium you need.
There aren't too many fruits out there that don't know the difference between a banana and a mango. Stop. You're assaulting a protected fruit group. Okay, back to the story. Yana Peel is
the biggest hypocrite in the world. The biggest hypocrite in the world. Yeah, this NSO group thing. The Pegasus software is just really appalling. The fact that she's trying to defend this as being in any way justifiable. At least her husband, I think, stepped down from whatever bogus human rights group he was currently on the board of by realizing that, this is not a good look. I have the group that was used to track human rights protesters all over the globe and possibly involved in the murder of Khashoggi. And
she said when they gave it to the Saudis for the Khashoggi killing, they had enough leverage over the Saudis to make sure that the Saudis actually strangled him for at least 15 seconds before they cut him up with a bone saw. They were going to do it right away, but because she's a great human rights defender, she leveraged them, and she's a very wonderful, kind, and loving person, I'm sure.
Yeah, she made sure they bought some of her artist's art before they did the chopping because, she runs a gallery, right? So, and the gallery really protects its artists. It makes sure the blood doesn't get on the paintings when the Saudis are chopping up her
galleries. It's the free speech gallery. She's the free speech lady, and she's selling Kill Khashoggi to the Saudis.
It's really just amazing scumbag. I'm actually surprised that The Guardian ran that story. It was peppered all over with allegedly. Oh yeah, the NSO group only allegedly runs this software that will completely hijack your phone and make your life a living hell. No, that's only allegedly. No, they advertise that. That's what the software is advertised to do. But whatever, you got to put some allegedly in there. I understand you're covering your ass, but.
So more censorship news. Here we have the Koch brothers teaming up with George Soros. It's already a bad combination.
This is a
Patreon. Oh, it gets worse. That's a major chunk of my income right there. All what is it? $600 a month. And Airbnb to fight online extremism.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess that's the end of it. If I go to Airbnb, I'm going to be devoured. Probably.
Airbnb is pure evil. They were going to remove. They were going to remove listings that were in the West Bank, and then they had a backlash from the ADL and these other scumbags, and then they decided to relist the West Bank listing. So it's okay, you do a morally correct thing, which is great because Airbnb is responsible for a lot of morally dubious things such as promoting gentrification, making cities unlivable by making sure that everybody can rent out their closet, and so that people who aren't renting out their closets can't afford to live there anymore. But okay, you did a morally correct thing. You delisted settlements in the West Bank from your website, and now you put them back on because the ADL frowns and weeps tears of solid anti-Semitism.
The ADL is teaching all these people. They're taking Koch's money and they're taking Soros's money, and together that's a lot of money. and then they're waving it around at Patreon and who knows who else. The whole internet is probably going to succumb to this. The ADL is going to end up being the commissar of the entire internet.
Yep, that's basically where they're headed. I mean, and that's where they want to be headed. And they've been using basically all Jews as a human shield this entire time. They say, oh, you can't criticize the ADL because it's anti-Semitic. Well, no, actually, most Jews are not on board with this. This is going way too far. This is really because people realize that this is going to come back on them because, like I said, they're being used as a human shield. And nobody wants to be a human shield. So the ADL should know all about that because whatever. Anyway, but yeah, the fact that the Koch brothers are involved now too really is the icing on a really repugnant cake.
Yeah, since the ADL is doing this, and of course they're a pro-genocide group, their main mission is to propagandize for the genocide of Palestine by smearing people that are a problem for that project. And then everything else they do is kind of incidental window dressing and blowing smoke to disguise their real mission. I mean, they are a genocide group that's being hired to police the internet. This is completely nuts, but what are you going to do? And speaking of which, Richard Silverstein happens to be Jewish, I think. That sounds like, I don't think he's related to Larry. Anyway, he's a pretty good guy. I mean, I like his writing. One of these days he might
I've read his blog before. He's on the right side.
Or something. Yeah, he's pretty decent. And so he gets suspended because he criticized Israeli settlers who legally, according to the Israeli courts, stole land from Palestinians by forging signatures. The offensive statement that he made was, Israeli settlers steal the land. And
it's like saying what is wet. That's like saying what is wet. No, that's ridiculous.
Pope's Catholic, the bear does whatever in the woods. Yeah, I mean, come on, Facebook. What can you put on Facebook if you can't say that?
No, this makes me really feel like I made the right decision by getting off Facebook, basically. But it's unfortunate that so many people still choose to conduct their interactions on there because you really can't say anything. I mean, if you can't say water is wet or Israeli settlers steal land, then really what can you say? Because that's like a really obvious, it's practically a tautology. I mean, settlers, they call them settlers, but it's colonialism and colonies is land theft. That's the whole point of the thing. So yeah.
That's what they do. That's their mission statement.
Yeah, it's a tautology. You can't. Yeah. So it's basically like the party in 1984 saying, okay, well, 2 + 2 = 5. Oh, you want to say 4? Well, here, I have a cage with rats put on your head. Well, no, actually, it's still 4, but yeah.
Right. And the next story is pretty much along the same lines. The DOE is investigating an anti-Israel event at the University of North Carolina and Duke University. I guess North Carolina is a very dangerous place. I guess there are a couple of smart young Muslims going to school down there, which makes it a very dangerous place. They had a conference called Conflict Over Gaza, People, Politics, and Possibilities. Wow, that's pretty scary. And sponsored by the Duke UNC Consortium for Middle East Studies. Oh, how terrifying. And the speakers repeatedly maligned Israel and pro-Israel Jews. Oh my goodness, you don't like genocide, you speak out against it, you've maligned Israel and pro-Israel Jews. And it's time to head straight for Kafka's iron cage, I guess.
Yep, and it's you no longer get told what you're guilty of, you just get scrubbed from all search engines, removed from the internet, and put into a little box on freebeacon.com.
Kicked out of the university.
Yeah, I mean, I hope these people didn't get kicked out of the university, but I'm sure that if they had their druthers, they would certainly get them removed. I mean, the problem is college campuses are full of young, idealistic people who haven't really settled into the whole, oh, well, this is just how things are. Genocide is, it's the way that things are. No, these people actually care, and so their activism should be encouraged, not squelched.
Yeah, they're passionate. They actually have a little time on their hands, most of them, the ones who aren't stuck working at minimum wage jobs to pay their tuition, and they look into things, and they're passionate, and at that age, they still care about justice. And so all of these people should be given medals. They shouldn't be investigated, harassed, tortured, and so on and so forth. But that's the way it is in the American Academy right now. I'm frankly kind of glad I left. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to leave if the Academy actually were the Academy and did its job and lived up to its mission statement. But given what it is today, I think I would be embarrassed to still be in it. I think when Tony Hall was ejected from the University of Lethbridge, it was actually a great compliment to his work. So I don't know, people should save their tuition money maybe and educate themselves in other ways.
I think so. I mean, I really enjoyed my time in college, but I was just right before all of this terrible stuff started happening. I mean, I wasn't super politically active, but it was still a climate where one could be politically active and not get your prospects for employment in the future ruined and not get hounded out of your social circles or relationships or whatnot. What they're doing now is really scary, and it's being, again, funded with our tax dollars. So yeah, congratulations. You, the money that you pay to your government then is given to Israel and then given to these groups, so whatever astroturf group this particular one is, I don't remember, to go after American college students who happen to get a little too big ideas in their head about how justice should work in the world.
Indeed. And so Israel is definitely the worst culprit, but there are other culprits too. The war on Russia is not 100% Israeli driven, although they're probably contributing. The New York Times tells us that the US planted the cyber kill switch in the Russian power grid. And the media said, oh, that's okay. Yeah, what's wrong with that? Well, when the Russians were even like thinking of planting something in the US power grid, it was a national emergency, wasn't it? What happened here?
Obviously, you know, when the shoe is on the other foot, it's like, yeah, well, you know, the Rachel Maddow being like, oh, yeah, they're gonna turn off our power, we're all gonna freeze to death. Well, you have any idea how cold it is in Siberia? I mean, maybe you guys want to like not just, you know, frostbite millions of people. No, this is completely disgusting, and it just shows that Americans don't think of other countries as human. We've known this for a long time, and it's usually, I think it used to be that at least they thought of other quote unquote white countries as human, and now it looks like we don't even have that anymore. They just don't think of anybody as human. Maybe the UK, because they always agree with us on our false flags and stuff. But it looks like they don't see Russians as human anymore, which is too bad, because like the Russians, at least the ones that I work with, are some of the most awesome people, and like just Russians that I've met in general are really quality people and solid, and we should be allies with them. But instead, our country is run by idiots, and we will, I mean, I don't see that happening anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, I'm studying with Sheikh Imran Hossein here in Malaysia, and I just interviewed him. People can find that at my radio show. Sheikh Imran is well known for saying that Muslims should be allied with Russians in general, and more specifically the Eastern Orthodox Church. He's kind of seen through this. He sees the Quran actually is amazingly accurate, or suggestive at least, on these things, saying that, you know what, hey, Muslims, watch out for the Jews and Christians bracketed together. The Christians will be closest to you in love and affection, but don't be allies and friends with the Jews and Christians bracketed together. Well, that's warning us about the Christian Zionists, about the Christians who bought into the Old Testament craziness. And so I think Sheikh Imran is barking up the right tree with his amazing Islamic eschatology. If people want to see amazing end times work, check him out. He's all over YouTube, and I have a piece, interview up with him. But yeah, Russia is closer to being the good guys for sure than we are. And they're bragging about this, hacking the power grid over there. We're doing things on a scale we never contemplated a few years ago. And the New York Times is like going right along with it, not even questioning.
Yeah, you can just picture them twirling their mustache and like stroking a white cat or something. It's like, really, can you guys be any more cartoonishly evil? Like, you really are a bunch of scumbags. Just stop. Stop.
Well, yeah, they're getting pretty good at it, though. I think they've been method acting too long, and they're starting to believe in their role. So the next story has the war on Venezuela. This was a brilliant story, and this was by you, wasn't it? This Venezuela piece?
No, this one wasn't me, unfortunately. No, there's another one later that's me.
That's right. Oh yeah.
This one was funny though. I commented on this on Twitter. Yeah, he's saying that oh well, you know, if this was a dictatorship, we'd be covering up our corruption. And I said, yeah, instead of flaunting it, waving it around, being proud of it like your U.S. masters, because this is completely ridiculous. He basically, again, could you be any more cartoonish? Took the money from Richard Branson's Death Squad aid concert, and decided to spend money on his and his cohorts' nice things. So yeah, great. Vat-grown CIA wannabe president decides that he wants to treat himself nice. And so while he claims all of his people are starving and eating zoo animals in the streets, he buys himself some new shoes or whatever, like several $1 million worth of new shoes.
A male Imelda Marcos.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, so this is typical, though, because the people that work with the evil empire against their own country are basically worthless, psychopathic scumbags. And I mean, Iranian gusanos are another case in point. Hey, gusanos who love to live in fancy mansions in Los Angeles with the Shah's relatives, snorting cocaine, watching porn. If you want to do that, stay in Los Angeles. You shouldn't be going and wrecking Tehran so you can go back there and do that stuff there. Let the Tehran people do their thing. So yeah, these people that the U.S. can get to help destroy their own countries are just worthless creeps. That's how it always is. We always find the worthless, creepy gangster psychopaths because they're the only ones who will work with us. And that's the story of the U.S. empire post-World War II. That's why we've murdered 60 million people all over the world, according to Chomsky and Volchek's book on Western terrorism. It's because of that. And the good people are the people who stand up to us, like the people in Iran who are standing up to us right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the technique of colonialism for going back centuries. You find the one guy who's willing to betray his own people, and then you fund him and back him. And unfortunately, he's a scumbag, so he'll probably betray you too.
But he's our scumbag.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they even said that. Like, that's a verbatim quote from whoever.
They twirl their mustache. They did it.
Wasn't it like Kissinger who said that? Like, he might be our. It wasn't scumbag. He said he might be our something, but he's our something. About Pinochet or some nonsense.
Yeah, it was basically scumbag. I mean, very similar.
But yeah, speaking of Kissinger, put Elliot Abrams in there.
Kissinger says that to be an enemy of the U.S. is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. You know, the Iranians are listening to that. They heard Kissinger, and they know he's actually blurting it out.
Well, that Bolton bloviating about the Libya option. I mean, yeah, the Libya option is being raped to death with a bayonet. I don't think anybody wants that option. And so we're running your mouth about that. No wonder North Korea calls him a defective human product.
Speaking of Kissinger, did you see they called in Kissinger for this latest crisis?
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
They wheeled him in his coffin. You know, they pulled him out and they put the pump on to get the formaldehyde out. They pumped in the baby's blood. They pumped his heart. Boom, boom, and he comes to life. Oh, more war crimes. More blood.
You just see, like, as he walks by, all the plants that he steps over like wither and die, and like birds falling out of the air, and it's just like, ugh. Nobody wants Kissinger.
Nobody likes Kissinger, but how about that Donald Trump? He saved the world. He could have destroyed the world last night, but he didn't. Hooray for Donald Trump. That's the best thing he's ever done. And he's also, he's blurting out that he thinks he knows who was behind 9/11, and he's saying it's not who you think it was. Can you believe this? He's still doing it. He did that on the campaign.
The reason he was doing this was because he wants to use the AUMF, the Authorization for Use of Military Force, to try to shoehorn Iran into the...
That's the bad news. The good news is that he doesn't believe the official story of 9/11. The bad news is
but he thinks it's Iran. I don't think he actually thinks it's Iran. I don't think anybody's that stupid. But he's saying that it's Iran. It's for the same reason that he tried to get that he did get the the Islamic Revolutionary Guard classified as a terrorist group, because he wants to use the AUMF, the same threadbare, like, hole-filled AUMF that's been stretched to cover countries as far apart as like the Philippines and Kenya. He's trying to say, like, the Bush and Obama before him, trying to say that there's we need to go into the Philippines to fight Al Qaeda. Yeah, sure, Al Qaeda is just bristling with. I mean, Philippines is just bristling with Al Qaeda. So is Kenya too. Yeah, totally, and Djibouti and Somalia. Yeah, great. The 30 places.
Get the way Trump said this. I mean, look at the way he said this. It's very much like Wired magazine talking about the global hawk can carry 7 cargo containers full of cocaine. And here's Trump saying he knows who was behind 9/11. He says, quote, "It was not Iraq. It was other people. And I think I know who the other people were. And you might also." And he gives Stephanopoulos a hard look. Yeah. There's something going on there.
It's pretty funny, because it's almost like he's threatening them, like, hey, let me do this on my own, at my own pace, or else I'm gonna, like, reveal the whole thing.
That's one interpretation.
I think it's more to string his followers along, because the people who are still supporting Donald Trump, a lot of them are the ones who think that, he's just playing everybody and he's gonna, like, pull the rug out from under everybody in the end, and then everything's gonna be all great and awesome. Now, I don't really understand how you can be quite that delusional, but there are people who are that delusional, and they really like Trump still, and he's got to throw them some red meat, because right now all he's doing is throwing the Zionist red meat with all this Bolton and Pompeo nonsense. But he's got to throw his supporters some meat too.
Well, if Trump he starts a big war with Iran, destroys the world economy, he gets run out of the USA on a rail, he still has a place to go. Trump Heights in the occupied Golan. They just named Trump Heights after him, a gift from Bibi Netanyahu. So he can live on territory that the entire world says is illegally occupied on the basis of a war of aggression by the Israelis. And that's one. You think Trump will end up there, or if he did, he might end up getting a couple of Hezbollah rockets up the wazoo, which is pretty much what he deserves at this point.
He'll be a little bit lonely, because there's actually nothing there. It's a sign. It's a sign and empty land. There's not even any money budgeted to build a settlement there. The fine print in this whole thing is that, like, they have to wait until the new government is formed, and the new government might decide to tell Trump to go get lost, because this is, there's nothing there. It's
the whole thing. Yeah, there was a great article by Israel Shamir saying that the Project Antichrist is now on hold. They thought they had it. They were going to rebuild the blood sacrifice temple, and the Dajjal, or the Antichrist, was going to rule the world from Jerusalem. Jared Kushner maybe thought that was him, but now it's all on hold because they can't even get their election straight.
Yeah, I have to say, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Bibi deserves every little bit of that.
And speaking of things that couldn't happen to a nicer guy. So if Trump somehow survives and doesn't get driven out of the United States with torches and pitchforks for attacking Iran, he might be president for life. According to who? Well, who else? Donald Trump.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I really, it's going to be fun to be Donald Trump because he just has no, reality doesn't intrude at all. There's no reality gets in. He's just completely self-contained in this bubble of like.
Isn't that the textbook definition of psychosis? The
yes.
Lack of reality testing. That's in the manuals.
Yes, but I think that some psychopaths really enjoy their psychosis, and I think he seems to be one of them. I mean, he seems to be like happy with his psychosis. I think. I mean, maybe he's just a good actor or something. But yeah, I don't see.
He's going to be president for life, and the New York Times and the Washington Post are going to disappear.
I mean, it felt all those lawsuits against Washington Post and New York Times for that Covington thing. I mean, I don't know how much money the New York Times even has these days, and they might not be able to afford to pay out. Who knows? Bezos can afford to pay, but New York Times, who knows?
Yep. Well, here's one of the few times I actually agree with the Jonah Goldberg, this evil neocon creep. He says if Trump refusing to leave would make him the crazy guy the Marines escort out of the building. And yeah, that's probably true. I would hope the Marines are smart enough to do that. Well, let's move on to the next article. It's this is the great article that you wrote, Helen. This is the one I read through these articles pretty fast, but this was a kick butt article on the Generation Z dilemma. Brilliant work. Talk about it.
Yeah, basically that the millennials and Generation Z are killing themselves at higher numbers than ever before. The deaths of despair, they call them, which is basically suicide, death of drug overdose, and death by alcoholism, are through the roof, quadrupling in some places, quintupling in West Virginia. And basically, they're scrambling to figure out, okay, well, why exactly is this going on? We've just been saying that millennials are lazy layabouts who just live in their parents' basements and have no ambition. And now it's actually that they graduated in the middle of the economic crash, 2008, and they had no economic prospects. So they're told growing up that, oh, the world is your oyster. You can do anything you want because you're special, you're a snowflake, et cetera, et cetera. That part is somewhat true. Yes, participation trophies, et cetera. Everybody was taught that they had limitless potential. And then they get out into the real world and they're told, okay, well, you're lucky if you can get a job waiting tables, have fun moving back in with your parents. So, and they wonder why people are depressed or why people are killing themselves. I mean, in America is unlike other cultures in that being poor is considered a personal failing. It's left over from like Calvinism, I guess. You're responsible for what happens to you in life. And so other countries, it would say, okay, it's a societal problem that we have so many poor people, we have to fix this. In America, it's bootstrap yourself or die trying. And a lot of people are just dying trying because there is no way to do it. They don't teach bootstrapping in schools. They teach being an obedient slug in schools. And so if you get out into the real world and you suddenly have to become an entrepreneur, people can barely spell entrepreneur, let alone be one. And this is the obvious fallout of the economic policies that have been for the last several decades. Spend all your money on war, so you have no social safety net. Even the people who are retiring now are finding that their savings disappeared in the last crash. And so, yeah, people of all ages are killing themselves. It's not just Generation Z and millennials, but those happen to be the ones that are in the headlines. So that was what I put in my headline.
It's a great story and pretty depressing, but also makes you kind of hope these people can, get kicked in the butt and get up off their whatever and do something about this. There's a great Baudelaire prose poem called "Kill the Poor" that describes how the dandy Baudelaire comes along. You know that one? Yeah, there's a poor guy is lying on the sidewalk. He comes along and despises him, and the poor guy is so pathetic. And then so Baudelaire starts beating him up, and the poor guy gets up and beats the crap out of Baudelaire, and that's precisely what the poor millennials should be doing to their rich exploitive elders, specifically the oligarchs and the other people whose wealth is totally unjustly attained. And these statistics of drug use and social media addiction and anxiety, suicide rates, alcohol, all this stuff is horrific. And it is all about the economy isn't living up to expectations because America, what's America? It should be about the First Amendment, but what it's really about is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness means the pursuit of money and their idiotic fantasy. So if you can't get the money, you're worthless. That's the national philosophy. And it's a really interesting article. Actually, I think there's a full book called Muslims Most Civilized, but Not Enough by Dr. Jabed Jamil, who's been a long time collecting data showing that despite being not terribly rich, except in certain countries, Muslims are doing very well on these negative social indicators. There's less crime, less violent crime, less drug addiction, less depression, massively less suicide, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on the whole, in the Islamic countries, communities, even in non-Muslim countries. So maybe you should think about something in life being beyond just making money. In my case, I would say surrendering to God and experiencing ultimate ecstasy and doing false flag weekly news every week is better than making money. But hey, I'm preaching.
I mean, it's just that unfortunately we have just scraped out all other parts of society. So it's just free market is above all. And there's no sense of creativity, no sense of trying to find meaning, no sense of even trying to leave the world a better place than you found it. It's just, I've got mine and screw all of you guys. So like the fact that that's the central tenet of our society, and we're wondering why people are just offing themselves in record numbers. I mean, you would have to be an idiot not to be surprised by that. So, I mean, to be surprised by that rather. Obviously.
So yeah, brilliant article. And there was another good one on Information Clearinghouse, 2 really first-rate articles on this problem.
Oh yeah, this is 43%. I didn't even know that statistic going into my article. That's crazy. That's almost half of people who are considered poor in the richest country in the world. Yeah, sure, guys.
Oh boy, and the richest country in the world is still desperate to try to make people are unemployed. And that's not just the richest country, but the billionaire oligarchs that run the world. At Airbus, they're going to sell the world on pilotless planes. Now,
this
you
is
can't
my
override them if they do something crazy, but you could save $30 billion per year because you're not paying the pilots. They're all joining the unemployment line, and they're taking drugs and committing suicide. So this is a brilliant idea. I can't wait to get on a pilotless plane.
This is my article. I wanted to have people choose between, okay, do you want to get in a pilotless plane, or do you want to get in a plane with faulty computer programming and either way, you probably are going to die, because if you don't trust Boeing's computer programming, do you trust Airbus's computer programming? I didn't come to a conclusion in this article, and I really don't know which one I would rather fly in. I'm rather hesitant to get in a Boeing these days. But if they've got enough pilots and they all know what they're doing, I'll get in the Boeing before I get in the pilotless one, because sorry, no.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hal, and I will be your pilot. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer due. Okay, moving on to the second to last story here. Jim Fetzer loses his Sandy Hook libel lawsuit, or at least round 1, all around the alleged fraudulent copy of Noah Posner's death certificate. The father, Lenny Posner, sued Jim and Mike Polachek of the book publishers for libel, and Jim lost on the basis that this death certificate actually was a real one, and the fact that some of the copies on the internet were not identical didn't prove that it wasn't real. And Jim Fetzer is a good friend of mine, but on this particular issue, I thought he had a pretty tough case. I wasn't actually that surprised by the outcome.
No, I mean, he did the wrong thing. If you're going to go around saying things about non-public figures that are not actually correct, then you better expect to get sued, because that's a really foolhardy thing to do. And that's why he damages every movement he shows his face in. But, that's he's bullheaded in that way. And I think that it's just not a good look to have Jim Fetzer show up in your movement.
Yeah, well, I think he's stubborn, and he won't back down even when he's obviously wrong. And
that's a terrible characteristic for an activist to have.
Yeah. Longtime viewers of this show may have remember seeing some crazy stuff on that back in the day. But we'll move on to the end. Okay, so if they're censoring Jim Fetzer through libel suits, that's if you want somebody libels, you take them to court. Don't get them deplatformed. But they're deplatforming everybody, including lots and lots and lots of people doing responsible work like me. So I decided to do something really responsible. Yeah, I said, let's okay. If I can't do alternative media anymore, I'm going into the T-shirt business, and I have this great T-shirt design, and I'm sure YouTube is going to love this when this shows up on YouTube.
No, this is a great shirt. Yeah, obviously, anybody who doesn't know, Nassim Agdam is the YouTube performance artist. YouTube performance artist who was deplatformed and decided to take matters into her own hands at YouTube headquarters. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and of course it's a joke, but it's a double-edged joke, because there are probably a lot of really, really angry people who've had their whole livelihoods destroyed. And YouTube shouldn't do that, or at least they should be really careful and only do that if what's being put up is essentially
is actually like illegal, or actually inciting to violence. Like if it's naming people by name and saying you should go out and kill this person, then obviously yes, take it down. But her videos were actually kind of cool, I thought. I mean, there was like this animal rights stuff, and she's dressing up in weird costumes. I liked her videos, and so I was sad to see that she was taken offline. I think that she was.
Well, we're definitely not doing anything crazy like that. We're just going to sell T-shirts, but I hope that won't happen, because I hope YouTube can take a joke, but I'm not holding my breath on that one until next week. we'll see what happens next week, whether we're broadcasting live on YouTube as usual or not. But anyway, thank you so much, Helen Bajnitsky. It's always great fun to touch bases with you. And we'll look. I'm going to try and do the show again next week. Can you do it next week?
I don't know about
We'll
that.
see. We'll work on that. Anyway, we'll try our best to be back. YouTube censorship or no YouTube censorship. This is Kevin Barrett with Helen Bajnitsky. Thank you, Helen. Thank you to all our audience. See you next time.
Bye-bye.